lost the connection. I lost the network connection. I had a disconnection of network. Welcome back, my viewers. Welcome back. I'm back again. I'm back again. By accident, I lost the network. But I'm now back, viewers. I'm now back, viewers. I lost the connection. I'm now back. Welcome back, my viewers. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, my viewers. Viewers, welcome back again. I had a disconnection. I had a network disconnection, but I'm back again. Viewers, welcome to my live stream. I am back now. Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back to my stream. Welcome back to my stream. I lost the network. I had a network disconnection, but I'm now back. Welcome, viewers. Let us carry on with my agenda, with my topic, which I was talking about. I told you, viewers, that my today's live stream, purposely, I'm going to talk about Tanzania post-election. But before I talk about the Tanzania post-election and what happened after the general election, which took place this year, it was October. Let me say something about Africa. Africa, I myself, I can concur with those who still perceive Africa as a dark continent, not in terms of development, but in terms of views, in terms of our ideas. Africa still is a dark continent. It's like we are still in the 40s, 30s, 20s. That is how Africa is all about it currently. I want to talk about African democracy because before I talk about Tanzania post-election, purposely I'm talking about Tanzania democracy or African democracy. You know, Africa is the most colonized continent ever to happen in the world. It's the most colonized continent. So it was the most colonized continent. Though up to now, Africa is still colonized. I can say that. After all, Africa is still colonized. I can say that because we cannot decide on our issues. We have to depend on Europe, America, and other developed countries. Let me talk about Africa in the 1960s before I talk about Tanzania post-election and what happened after the election. Okay, we have this car which is passing this area, but let us carry on with what I'm talking. Africa in the 60s, it was what can I call it? Perhaps a period of renaissance. Africa in the 60s, I can call it as a period of renaissance in the 60s. It was a period of independence struggling. It was a period whereby many elite people emerged in Africa. They started to struggle for independence. They started to fight for independence. To mention few, we had people like Kwame Nkrumah. Uh, we had Julius Nyerere. We had Nelson Mandela. Only to mention few. But again, in the 60s and 70s, Africa was divided between two blocks. That was Western Bloc and Eastern Bloc. Western Bloc being led by America, and Western Bloc being led by Russia. So Africa was divided, or it divided itself between those two parts, Eastern and Eastern. So we had the socialism and we had the capitalism in Africa. That was after independence. What happened? Well, those allies, those people who took that beauty of fighting for independence, once they got power, once they were given those countries, they turned to be African colonialists. I can call them black colonialists. Most of them, and some even are still in power up to date. Viewers, in Africa, up to now, currently, we still have presidents who are in power for over 30 years. We have presidents who are in power over 30 years, to mention few. We have Museveni from Uganda. That is my neighboring country. We have Museveni from Uganda. Viewers, the guy is still in power up to date. And this year, he is again contesting. He is running for president this year. Just imagine, since in the 80s, he emerged from forest as a guerrilla warrior and became a president. But up to now, Seven is still in power and he is running for president. So, when these guys took power, they turned to be kings. They didn't want to leave power to other people. This is where a problem started in Africa. In the 90s, starting from 80s, 19s, many countries started to adapt into multi-party system. So we started to adapt into multi-party democracy, many African countries. But what happened with the multi-party democracy is this one. Many readers, those presidents, they practice hypocrisy. You know, we have hypocrite people in Africa. So some of them actually were corrupted, were bought, and started the so-called opposition political parties. And some even were started by the ruling political parties. So they acted as a branch of the ruling political party. So they were pro-ruling political parties here in Africa. Most of the political parties, most of the opposition leaders were those of that kind. And many political parties were inaugurated on that situation, which I told you that It's the government in power, it's power in power, it's people in power who initiated those political parties. They termed as political parties, but in reality, those are not political parties, but they are pro-government parties. So that is the main problem with African democracy, and that is where the problem started with the African democracy. So in reality, we can say totally we don't have democracy in Africa. Few countries practice a true democracy, especially Southern African countries. The Southern countries actually practice a true democracy. For example, Okay, viewers, welcome back. Again, I had a network connection, but I'm back again. But I'm back again. But I'm back again. Back again. But I am back again. Back again. Welcome. I'm back again. I'm back here, viewers. Welcome back to this live stream. Viewers, welcome back to this live stream. Again, I had a network disconnection. We don't have a stable network. This is Africa. This is not Europe or America. So network is a problem. Okay, viewers, I was talking about African democracy. And I told you that today I'm going to talk about Tanzania post-election. I'm going to touch what happened in Tanzania after the beginning election, which took place in October this year, 9th October this year. Actually, we had a disputed kind of election which has never happened in our country since independence or since colonialists, the British left this country. We never had such kind of election as what happened in this year. But before I jump to Tanzania democracy or Tanzania elections, I was talking about African democracy. I was telling you that many African countries shifted from monoparty political systems to multi-party political system. Many African countries, it was in the 80s and 90s. But what happened? In reality, it wasn't the so-called true politicians, but they were people who were turned by the government into opposition parties, and some of them even were being paid. So we didn't have all up to date. We don't have true political parties. Most of them are pro-government political parties. They are a branch of political parties. What do they do? It is to participate in the election on the side of government. And surprisingly, you can even hear them congratulating the so-called elected presidents, even if the election was by an open eye, filth, just rubbish. They emerge and congratulate. Even if people are crying in the streets, people are protesting, people are rioting about or against the so-called election. But those guys gonna emerge and congratulate the so-called elected leaders. So this is what happened in Africa. The same situation is still operating up to now because it is a kind of what can I call it? It is it's like a gang. It's like a group. It's like a syndicate. Yes, it's like a syndicate. It operates within the system. But I told you that we have few African countries which are really practice through democracy. For example, the Southern African countries. Take an example of South Africa. Take an example of Zambia. Take an example of, of Malawi. For example, this year Malawi had general election. Actually, those two elections went perpendicularly. Uh, they were held in the same month as to Tanzania. But what happened in Malawi? Malawi had a true democracy. Those guys have stepped forward. They had a free and fair election. What happened? The opposition leader was elected as a president, and the president in power actually agreed with the results. He congratulated his colleague, the opposition leader, and he is now the president of Malawi. But in most African countries, that can never happen. That can never happen. Really, I'm telling you. They can even postpone the election if it's like the opposition leaders, the opposition parties are going to win. You can see the so-called electoral commissions nullify elections, nullify the so-called elections. So this is all about Africa. So generally up to date, Africa, we don't have true democracy, as I told you, with an exception of few countries. Uh, for example, those few countries which I mentioned: South Africa, Zambia, Malawi, mostly the Southern African countries. Those are the countries which really practice true democracy. But as I lost, for example, we here in East Africa, we only have one country which has true democracy, that is Kenya. In Kenya, guys, really they have done a true democracy. And this is because, this happened after they had a new constitution. But most of the African countries, viewers, if you're watching this live stream from Europe or America, just know, only few countries in Africa practice true democracy. And that's why you see we have got a lot of problems in Africa. We have got a lot of civil wars in Africa. That is the main reasons. Guys in power are not willing to accept defeat. They can even use their army, police, and other groups to torture, kidnap, even kill people so as to remain in power. Let me turn to my country. This is Tanzania. Guys, Tanzania is found in the eastern part of East Africa. Tanzania is bordered by Malawi. Malawi is there. It's bordered by Zambia. That's the direction. Currently, I'm streaming from the southern region of Tanzania. This is called Mbeya. So Mbeya is a region which acts as a border between Zambia and Malawi. Tanzania as Tanzania adopted the multi-party political parties system in 1992. And the first general election, which involved many political parties, it was in 1995. The ruling party, they called CCM, won the election. From 1995 up to date, the so-called ruling party CCM is still in power, still controlling all the system. But earlier I told you that Africa in the 1760s, I was not there, was not already born, divided itself in two parts, western part and eastern part. Western part, I think you know, leader viewers, is being led by, or it was led by America, and the eastern part being led by Russia. So Africa divided itself in these two blocks, western and eastern. For example, in Tanzania, we allied with Russia. So Tanzania adapted the so-called socialism. Tanzania adapted the so-called socialism, and we had the monoparty, just a single party, that is CCM, up to 1992, when the system changed and changed the constitution and adapted to multi-party political system. But up to date, that kind of democracy it's like it's a kind of democracy which is just not democracy. For example, our constitution, in our constitution, the president is all about anything in our constitution. The president is all about anything. It's all about the president. The president decide anything he wants. According to our constitution, the president is a demigod. According to our constitution, the president is above the law because there is nowhere you can accuse the president whether in power or not in power. There is no any place you cannot accuse. You can accuse the president. You cannot accuse. Our president cannot be sent to court even after retirement. This is it, according to our democracy. Since 1995, we is 30 years since that year up to date. But we have been read by one part. This is CCM. What happened is what I told you. Even here in Tanzania, the same situation which I told you is operating. Most of our political parties, so-called opposition political parties, are pro-government. Most of our political parties, especially opposition parties, are pro-government political parties. Okay, I'm checking my network here. Viewers, sorry. I'm checking my network here. I'm checking my network. Sorry. I'm checking my network. Sorry, viewers. I'm checking my network. I'm having a problem with my network, viewers. Sorry. I'm apologizing. Checking my network here, viewers. I'm checking my network. Sorry, guys. I'm checking my network. Sorry, viewers. Sorry. I'm apologizing. I'm having a problem with it because I'm observing my network from this device, which I'm holding here. So from here, from this device, I can check my network. If there's a problem persists, and then I can see what to do. Okay, viewers, I'm still checking my network. Let me check here. Let me check here. What's wrong with this, guys? What's wrong with this network? I'm still checking to my network. Checking this network, viewers. I don't know what's wrong with this network. Okay. Sorry, viewers. Sorry. I'm still having network problem. So I don't know what's the problem. Because I don't know what's the problem. Let me do this one. Let me do this one. Okay, viewers. I'm still checking my network here. I'm still struggling with my network. Okay, viewers. Welcome to this live stream. In case this is the first time to visit my channel, please consider subscribing. In case this is your first time, please consider subscribing, like, give your comments. Tell me anything in the comment section. Okay, let us meet in the comment section. Drop down your comments. I'm talking about Tanzania post-election, viewers. I'm talking about Tanzania post-elections. Okay, I'm struggling with my network here. I'm checking my network. I'm checking my network. I'm checking my network. Okay, let's check. Na wewe tuongeza kwako tuone hapa kishikwambi kinamzingua zingua hapa kionyeshi clear huko. Nashindwa hata kuelewa kama watazamaji wanapata picha ambazo ziko vizuri. Nikionyesha giza giza. Okay, viewers. Viewers, welcome to this stream. Sema hapa inaonyesha giza giza tu. Fanya mwanga. Viewers, welcome to this live stream. Okay, viewers, welcome. Yeah. Okay, viewers, welcome to this live. Students here. Welcome to this live. Welcome, viewers. Okay, I'm talking about the Tanzania post-election views. I'm talking about the Tanzania post-election. This year we had the general election. It was a kind of election which was the mostly disputed. It was the kind of disputed election which has never happened in our country since independence. Since independence, we had never had that kind of that kind of that kind of election. I was talking about Tanzania. That Tanzania, as other countries in Africa, we have the same kind of democracy. We have the kind of government systems which are controlled by a single political party. These guys in power control the general system. They control the military, they control the police, and all of the military forces are controlled by these uh, guys. These guys in power control the general system. So, um, we had election this year, as I said. We had the election. But, actually, I'm expecting to say this, but I will it here. In Tanzania, the main opposition party didn't participate in the general election, and they had their reasons as to why they didn't participate. They had their reasons, which really somehow sounds. In Tanzania, all most African countries actually we inherited our constitutions from colonialists. Even here in Tanzania, after independence in 1961, actually we inherited the constitution which was used by the British. So just imagine, the colonialists had a kind of constitution which generally favored them. It was a kind of constitution which didn't favor, which didn't look at the needs of people. So it was a kind of constitution which favored them. Um, most African countries and the leaders after independence, they didn't want to change those constitutions, but they inherited those constitutions. They used those constitutions purposely to stay in power for longer. Purposely to stay in power for longer. In Tanzania, as well, we had it, or we have that kind of constitution which we inherited from the British when they were alone in Tanganyika, and when they left, we adopted their constitution, which actually favored the British. Even Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, after independence, used the same constitution so as to favor him in power. That is the kind of constitution which most African countries use. In my country, this is Tanzania. According to our constitution, the president is above anything. The president is above anything. The president is above the law. That is the president. Just imagine, in my country, you enter into election, but the general organ of election, the so-called electoral commission, is controlled by one person. That is the president. The president nominates the chairman of the electoral commission and the other acting people in the office. So the general office of the electoral commission is under the control of the president. So starting, it's like a hierarchy. Starting on top, we have the chairperson who is elected by the president. His subordinates, all of them are nominated by the president. Up to the lower part, to the district level, we have the so-called returning officers. These returning officers are all elected or nominated by the president. Just imagine, you enter into such kind of election and you call it as a competitive election, while the organ which operates the election, which conducts the election, is manipulated. I can say so. It is manipulated. It is under the control of one person. That is the president. The president controls the electoral board, the electoral commission. And for example, in Tanzania, they made a few amendments and they call it Independent Electoral Commission. Independent Electoral Commission. Tume huru ya uchaguzi. Now, by using that as an independent electoral commission, while the whole system, the whole electoral commission is controlled by one person, that is the president. The president is above anything. The electoral commission is under the president. And you go into that kind of election and you expect to have free and fair election. Perhaps we have to have a checkup on your brain. Perhaps it's a brain problem, and you expect to win from that kind of election. I think that is a miracle. To win from that kind of election, it's a miracle, like selling pork in Iran. Can you sell pork in Iran? Can you sell pork in Saudi Arabia? So as it is impossible to sell pork in Saudi Arabia, as it is impossible to sell pork in Iran, as well it is impossible to elect, to emerge as a winner from such kind of election. Kind of election, as I told you, that being controlled by one person, being controlled by the so-called president, and you expect to emerge as a winner. So that is the kind I was trying to give out the general picture of Tanzania Electoral Commission, the general picture of Tanzania Electoral Commission. And if any person can win such kind of election. Well, I told you that I'm talking about all I'm going to talk about Tanzania post-election and what happened after election, but I'm trying to bring a picture so to see what led to the violence which emerged after election. That is what I'm doing. Well, the main opposition political party didn't participate in the election. They didn't participate in the election. But surprisingly and unexpectedly, this here we had something which has never happened in our history. Since the introduction of a multi-party system, we didn't even have 6 running candidates, just 6 people running for president. But this year, we had 17 people running for president. Just imagine the government. How comes the government provides or the government provided transport to these guys? The government gave them transport. The government, because of presidential status, to campaign for president. This has never happened, guys. Tell me, even in your country, has it happened that the government provide transport to people who are contesting for president? Tell me if this has ever happened in your country. Tell me in the comment section. I'm reading your comments here. Tell me in the comment section if this has ever happened. Tell me in the comment section. Tell me in the comment section if this has ever happened in your country that the government provides transport, provides car to people who are running for president, who are contesting for president. Tell me, has this happened in your country? But in Tanzania, this happened this year. This happened this year. The government, I'm not sure if it is the government or the Electoral Commission, provided cars, provided transport, provided transport to those, I think there were 16. I think there were 16. I think there were 16 people running for president. Just imagine. How comes a person contests the position of president? How comes the person contesting for the position of president while his party has failed even to contest at ward level? At ward level, just ward level, just an area of perhaps 1,000 people. A person who is running for president don't even have a single person in the whole country to contest for ward position, a ward councillor, we call it, follow the one. But the same guy is contesting for president. But at preliminary level, at ward level, last year we had the so-called local government elections. All those guys who were running for president this year they don't have even a single chair person. Here in our country, we call them chairpersons, chairpersons at village level, So these guys who were contesting for president this year, they don't even have those chairpersons at village, at street level. They don't have. But the same guys are running for president, and the government gave them transport just for free. Gave them transport, cars of presidential status. Well, despite the boycott of the main opposition party, which didn't participate in the election, but in this year's election, we had actually a lot of indicators showing that we're gonna have a disputed election. We had a lot of indicators showing that in this year's election, we're gonna have a disputed election. So there were voices from different parts in the country, religious organizations, civil organizations, so many advising the government that if possible, we have to postpone this election because we have clear indicators showing that we're going to have a disputed elections. Our leaders turned their ears out. They didn't hear. They neglected it. They rose up with a lot of jokes. With a lot of jokes. It was clear that the president in power had a lot of challenges from her own political party. Even her nomination was questioned by some of her political party members. Questioned her nomination as a running person for president to her political party. We are in the streets talking to CM members. Most of them didn't agree with what happened regarding to her nomination. So there were clear indications, clear indicators that perhaps we're gonna have violence in this election. But the government didn't hear. The government forced it to enter into election. And it happened that all of government officials started to provoke citizens, started to rise up with a lot of white sea, red sea, telling people, if you do this one, we're gonna deal with you perpendicular, police every day, stood up with a lot of fierce words. If anybody come out in streets, we're gonna deal with him, we're gonna deal with that perpendicular. So it was generally a problem. It was a problem. But indicators were clear. Indicators were clear, guys. As I said, indicators were clear that we can't have clear and fair election, and perhaps we're gonna have a disputed election. We went into election, but on the same day of election, violence started. Many polling stations were set ablaze. Many polling stations on the same day. were set ablaze. Even here in my region, many polling stations were set ablaze, were attacked, ballot boxes were set on fire. So violence started early in the morning, around 11 a.m. Violence started in my region, and it spread all the country. People attacked uh, dwelling properties were destroyed, set on fire. Public buildings, transport system, all of those were attacked by protesters. But despite all of these violences, despite the killings, a lot of people were hit by bullets. Many people lost their lives. A lot of people lost their life. I think perhaps you have seen the CNN report and this documentary prepared by that guy from Kenya, which showed clearly what happened after election. So it was a kind of violence which led to mass killings. Many people lost their life, but the government is still denying. The government kept quiet. Many people lost their life. This has never happened in Tanzania, as I told you viewers, it has never happened in Tanzania since the